Shall I tell you something that'll make you smile?
Uh-huh.
Your facial muscles. Hallmark don't just make Christmas movies.
I can't get my finger to go in the right direction, but you can see the sort of stripes of like more.
We have discovered that Hallmark make films the whole year through.
It's been a joyous joy of
It's a revelation.
But there are some prizes. We've got 5 prizes, and I've actually put together the 2 yarn prizes.
Oh, cattle grid. Tricky. I made it. That's not original Roman, of course.
There's 5. I said that. There's 5 prizes. 3 of the prizes I did. Erin Crack. I don't know if it's Krakow, crack off. I don't know how you. Can't be that, can it?
I hope not.
3 of the prizes.
How many of them are there?
There's 5. Did I say that?
You
There's
did.
5.
Welcome, everybody, to the Bakery Bears video show featuring the finale of Walking the Wall.
Ooh, are you all ready?
Can you believe it? It was January this year that we started. I mean, it's our, without any shadow of a doubt. I mean, you've done some amazing things this year. Cozy Kitchen, we've never gone after the production of a cooking show
it's been
quite the way.
Yeah, it's been a
My Favourite Colourways.
good year all round.
Well, it has. But Walking the Wall is the most ambitious filming we've ever sort of thought of, and I think Kay has probably tempered my enthusiasm. You know, just.
Have I?
Well,
Have I reined you in?
You rein me in quite rightly, because sometimes I go too far.
You just get a bit
I think we know
overexcited
that.
sometimes.
And you know, together, the yin and the yang, it gets us there.
I'm the boring one.
No, you're the one who thinks. I'm the one who steps forward where angels fear to tread. I can't believe that it's the end. Today. It seems like 2 minutes.
It does.
And, you know, when I say it's the most ambitious filming, it's the most ambitious filming for so many reasons. But, you know, one of the biggest is the time it takes to get there. Because, first of all, on these later walks, it is quite a distance from here.
It is quite a distance, yeah.
But also the type of country it is, that then also raises the whole journey time. So for it suddenly to be over, it's like...
It feels weird, doesn't it, that you've not got to go out and do that?
Yes, it really does. But, you know, it's a funny feeling, because I anticipated to be feeling sad about it. And actually, I don't. And that's not because I'm glad I'm not going to be going to do it anymore.
No.
Because I would go there and I would film 10 series. Because literally you could do that. But I'm so... Well, I hope that you enjoy today's Walking the Wall. That's
you
all
will
I'll
enjoy.
say at
I've
this
seen
point.
it. You will enjoy it.
It is.
It's. I think it is actually my favourite bit of the wall. Definitely, we've been a few times in the past.
Yeah.
And I just love that section of the wall. It feels really wallish.
Yes.
The walls are tall at that point,
There's
aren't
a part
they?
of Hadrian's Wall called Wallish Walls.
There is.
How cool is that?
Wallish Walls.
You could live in Wallish Wall.
Wallish Walls.
If you so chose. Please continue, caller.
But yeah, there's part, you know, for a stretch of it, the walls are quite high, aren't they?
Yes, it's very good.
I remember when we
Yes,
went with...
the midsection.
Yeah,
Yes.
the last time we went with Bryony, I remember we took photos and the wall was like up here
That's right.
at one point.
Yes. Bronnie was a lot shorter.
She was she was small then. She must have only been about 8 or 9, I reckon.
That's really funny.
So it's some years, actually, since we've all been there.
What a walk we have in store for you today. Because, yes, we are charting the end of the story of Hadrian's Wall and also the end of Roman Britain.
Yeah.
But what that means is we get into what comes next. So if you're looking for castles, you've come to the right place. If you want brave knights, stay right here. Yes, this is a story with a little bit of everything.
It does have a bit of everything, and Dan actually walks past a holiday cottage that we once stayed in, and
a number of years ago,
and he does point it out. So watch out for that. And
Yes.
then Dan walked part of the way that I used to go on a little walk every day in the castle that he goes to. I used to walk up to that castle every day on my own.
That is, of course, all to come later on in the show. We are also midway through. It's sort of just past the midway
We're
point
past midway.
of our amazing Sockoween event.
We are.
It's like suddenly it all makes sense to me. I never got Halloween. Now this event is not about Halloween. It's got nothing to do with Halloween.
Well, you're knitting socks with a Halloween theme.
You are.
But, you
But
know,
what I mean
that doesn't mean that you have to celebrate Halloween or go out and trick or treat. It doesn't mean that at all. You just
Because we don't do any of that.
No, we don't do any of that.
We never have.
We're just knitting socks with all of the colours and all of the feels
Seasonal.
of this part of the
Yes.
year.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, my goodness, it's really suddenly, seriously, I'm not joking. It's sort of making sense to me.
Yeah.
I'm like,
and we've even got our Halloween black on today. This is Halloween black, in case you didn't know. It's a very specific shade of black.
yes, it's so cool because yes, I've been starting to understand celebrating, this month a little bit more. But what's been so cool is seeing all of your amazing socks, which has just been outstanding.
It's so fun to see all the witchy stripes and the colours. And
also, though, we've been having lots of special events, lots of special things going on through this month. So there's your absolute beginner magic loop sock knitting series.
Yes.
My goodness, try saying that.
You didn't
at
say
the end of the day.
fully correctly,
Absolute
but I'll let
beginner
you off.
magic loop sock knitting tutorial series.
You said it weird, but it's fine.
Did I get it right second time?
You got it right.
Excellent. I got there in the end. There's been that. We've already had one special Patron Only show. That's our monthly special live show. And for the first time ever, we welcomed live on the show the editor of our magazine, who's just the reason why I brought this up.
Beautiful Jen.
Yes, we've just put out our very latest special Sockoween edition of Knitability.
We have.
And she's gone a bit crazy with the seasonal.
I know. It's so cool.
It's very cool.
Yeah.
So that's available now. So there's been loads of things. But the point of this whole Sockoween knit along is, of course, prizes, baby.
Well, that's not the whole point, is it?
Look, there'll be lots of knitters out there like me. It's all about the prizes.
Well, there are some prizes. We've got 5 prizes, and I've actually put together the 2 yarn prizes here, so I thought I would quickly show you. There's 5. I said that, it's 5 prizes. 3 of the prizes I did.
Look, tell us about the prizes.
3 of the prizes.
How many of them are there?
There's 5. Did I say that? There's 5.
Yes.
3 prizes are pattern prizes because I've got a new blanket pattern coming out on Halloween, so you'll be seeing that on the next show.
So 3 are.
Three of the blanket pattern are prizes, and then the other 2, and I can't.
3 of the blanket pattern are prizes.
Clearly, I'm struggling with wordage today.
They got it, I think.
So the other 2 prizes are yarn, and so the first of the 2 prizes is 2 skeins of my hand dyed, and these are skeins that I dyed up within the My Favourite Colourways this year.
Boom.
And kept them to one side because I thought they were Halloweeny. So these are one prize, these 2. So we've got After All This Time.
Yes.
I don't know if you remember it, and then Always.
I mean,
So these go together as one prize.
I want to see a pair of socks knitted with contrast.
Yeah, I know, that'd be so
Just
cool.
amazing.
So After All This Time is the one that's got lots of sort of little pops of colour. Can you see all the little pops of colour there?
Stunning.
And then this is sort of a coordinating, very bright and gorgeous violet. So that's one prize.
Amazing.
And then the other is a skein of the Malabrigo Ultimate Sock that I've been knitting with recently, and I really enjoyed it, and I've actually been wearing those socks and really like them. So I had a look. I'd got a couple of other skeins, and this one looks sort of Halloweeny to me, so this is the other prize. So it's the Ultimate Sock from Malabrigo, and this colourway is Piedras.
Beautifully said.
Thank you. And you can see it's all purples and browns, so very autumnal.
Matches your nails.
I know, look at my nails
That's
today.
gorgeous.
I've gone all sort of witchy. I don't normally wear polish this dark, but...
So those are the gorgeous prizes.
So those are
For the Sockoween
prizes
event.
for Sockoween.
It concludes on the 31st of October.
Yes.
So that means when we see you next time,
Yeah.
we will be awarding those prizes.
We will.
And this is our special.
Yes.
Whilst, the majority of this event has been for our patrons, I forgot to say, of course, last time we had the special My Favourite Colourways.
We
Sockoween
did.
special.
We did.
So it's not just been about
I've got those socks to show you.
But there's still time. If you would like to win one of those prizes, if you would like to enjoy all of our Sockoween goodness, there's still time to become a patron. You
Absolutely.
could then enter
You could.
by starting knitting some socks, because you don't need to finish them.
Don't need to finish them. No, just
you could be winning some of
post
those
a
prizes.
photo of your, whatever you've managed to get done within the amount of time. Post that in the FO thread on Ravelry, or you can always email us your entries as well if you don't use Ravelry.
Yes.
Yeah.
Cool. So Sockoween has been immense, and we've still got a couple of weeks to go, which is
Yes.
just wonderful.
Yeah.
I mean, just perfect. But look, that news
Yes.
pales into insignificance compared to the absolute thunderbolt of information I'm about to give you. Hallmark don't just make Christmas movies.
Did you know? Did you know this?
We have discovered that Hallmark make films the whole year through.
It's been a joyous joy of
It's a
discovery.
revelation. Oh my goodness, Her Pen Pal. Go watch it now.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yes. Yes,
Yeah.
also, October Kiss just disappeared, but I'm sure it'll come
It's
back.
just disappeared. I just watched October Kiss, and it's got an actor in that was in Parenthood.
Played the character of Joel.
Played Joel
Very
in
good actor.
Parenthood. Very good. It was a very good film. Really
Yes.
enjoyed it. So, yeah, we're now subscribers and avid fans of the Hallmark Channel.
The beauty of the Hallmark Channel is I've only watched, I think, a couple of these films with you, but I'm already mixing them up because they're all pretty much follow the same sort of...
They kind of do. They sort of merge into each other.
that's
and
what
do you
makes
know-
them
Do you know
marvellous.
what? They're fabulous. And, I've just had
Because I
them...
love the one about the woman who's high powered, doing really well in her job. Aren't they always?
Aren't they always?
Yes. And then she goes off somewhere really beautiful, and there happens to be a handsome hunk there.
Always.
Who also is a writer. The writer
yes.
one.
Oh, yes.
Brett Holton, I think his name was.
Yeah.
I thought that film... Oh, and of
The
course,
writer who was hiding away.
Bethany Joy Lenz from The Christmas Secret.
Yes.
She's a Hallmark staple.
You do actually see repeating actors
Erin
quite, quite...
Krakow, is it?
Erin Krakow. I don't know if it's Krakow or Krakoff. I don't know how you... Can't be that, can it?
I hope not.
That's too
If it
amusing.
is, I feel a bit sorry for her.
That's too funny. Let's say Krakow.
Epic,
Let's say
yes.
Krakow.
The Christmas ones are great.
Yeah.
But I like the non-Christmas
We
ones.
love the non-Christmas
Even
ones.
better.
We kind of do. Anything with pumpkins. I've watched several pumpkin-themed ones, and they're most excellent. I watched one that was pumpkin-themed, and, this woman went to this pumpkin farm that was a family pumpkin farm because, yes, that's what people do. And all of these pumpkins in this field, I've never seen so many fake
I know.
pumpkins
I saw
in
this
my
one.
entire life. It was brilliant.
It was great. It's great.
And they were, lifting them up
Yeah, I
going,
know.
oh, it's so heavy.
I loved it. It was good. There was good acting in that film.
Oh, brilliant.
Yes.
It's brilliant.
Look, enough of this frivolity.
Yes.
Because we have way too much wonderful things to show
We
you
do.
today. So without further ado, I shall ask Kay Jones, what's on your needles?
Okay, so the first thing... Ooh.
Oh, yes. These are gorgeous.
Yes.
Yes.
I saw this yarn. I was watching Emma Potter and Bloom, and she showed this yarn that she'd just purchased. And it was the name that got me. The colour I love, but the name got me. And it's a yarn from Spectrum Fibres. She's based in this country. She's a yarn dyer in this country. And she dyes up the most bright, fun colours. She's fantastic with colour, and it's always really vivid and bright and fun. The lady's name is Bryony, and that might give you a clue as to why I purchased this.
Because our daughter's name is Bryony too.
Absolutely. Although when I showed this to Bryony, when I showed her the tag, she got out a pen to change it, because there's two ways you can spell Bryony. You can spell it B-R-I or B-R-Y. Our Bryony is B-R-Y, and our Bryony says that that's the only way to spell it, of course. she's really funny with it. She's like, everybody else is wrong and I spell it right. And we're like, right, okay, that's fine. But there is 2 ways of spelling it. And Bryony from Spectrum Fibre is spelt with an I. So it's Spectrum Fibre, and don't you love little shiny love hearts on her ball bands? They're fun. And the colourway is Bryony's Nails. So I'm presuming this is a colourway based on a nail polish that's a favourite of Bryony from Spectrum Fibres. And I love the colour, and I was like, well, I've got to get some of that and knit Bryony some fingerless mitts. So what I did, I went to her shop and she didn't have any fingering weight in, but actually that's worked out brilliantly, because what I did get, I got a skein of DK and I got a skein of the alpaca fluff. It's the one that's Suri alpaca and silk. So I've got a skein of each. So the DK is just superwash merino. It's really lovely and plump and soft. So there's 252 yards in a skein of double knit, and then with the alpaca fluffy stuff you get 328 yards to 50 grams. So I've got a skein of each and I've doubled it, and I'm knitting some mitts for Bryony. So shall I show you the yarn? Are you ready? You'll need your sunglasses on for this one, because let me tell you, it's brighter than the sun. Here we go.
Woohoo!
Actually, that's pretty good.
That's perfect.
Isn't it fabulous? Look at that. That is really true to colour, as I'm looking on the screen.
Flamingo, that is.
Do you know, the colour it's that colour that's sort of, it's pink, but it's leaning towards that kind of neon peachy sort of tone. There's definitely a peachy pink thing going on here. Look how bright it is. Isn't it funny? It's totally neon, isn't it? And I thought, right, I'm going to double these, because the alpaca fluffy stuff, you can see just how fluffy that is. And I actually prefer this to mohair silk. I find mohair silk it can be a bit itchy actually, I think. If you were doubling it for like socks or mitts, I think it's totally fine. But anything that might be like around your head or your forehead or your neck, I think, for me, it's a little bit scratchy. But this alpaca fluffiness, it really is like a teddy bear. It's just like a teddy bear. And I'm funny. It's strange, because I'm also a bit funny with alpaca. Just plain alpaca. I find that a bit prickly. But this is not. So something magical happens to it, I think, when they add silk to it. The thing with this is you can replace sort of anything that's mohair silk. I would say you can replace it with this, but this is a bit thicker. It definitely knits up a bit thicker, and I think that's partly because the strand itself is a bit thicker, but I think it's primarily because the halo, I think, is a denser sort of halo. So I'm doubling it, and I am knitting some mitts that it's turning out quite dense, but that's what I wanted, because Bryony really loves fingerless mitts and she prefers those to full mitts. So I thought, well, for the winter, if I can make her a pair that's really nice and cosy, then hands will feel warm even if her fingers are still out, because they're in and out of bags all the time and they've got their phones, and so I think she just prefers fingerless mitts. So I have finished one. I've just totally improvised this, just made it up, the pattern. I'll pop it on my hand, shall I? That might be a good idea. Oh, it's so nice. It knits up really quick, and I've just put in this little sort of ribby pattern because I thought that might be nice. But look, oh, how lovely is that? Oh, it looks nice with my purple nails, doesn't it? Bryony said she's going to find some nail polish that's this colour or as close to when she wears them. It's just plain on the back. I'll take it off so I can show you the sort of ribbiness up close. So there you go. I just put in this sort of little interrupted rib, which I think looks really nice. So yeah, I finished this one super quick. It's just 40 stitches actually, because the yarn, when you double those two, it is really quite thick. I would probably say it's definitely worsted. I think it's even a bit heavier than a worsted. I think you're probably going towards Aran maybe in terms of the gauge, but I'm actually knitting. I've just cast on the, I'm in a bit of a tangled mess there. I'll sort that out. I'm actually using quite a small needle comparatively for the thickness of the yarn. I'm using 3.5mm Chow Goose. I've just got the second one cast on because I did want a really dense fabric. I can't remember what my gauge is, but it's definitely windproof. If I just show you, there you go. It's just, it's just lovely and so quick. The other thing I would say actually about it when you double it with this fluffy stuff, I think it makes it a bit less elastic, because normally, the rib at the top here, normally it would kind of suck in quite a lot, wouldn't it, with it being ribby, but it hasn't. It's fairly straight like that, and I haven't blocked this. So I think it does, if you do double it with that, I think it does take away some of the stretchiness. So that's something to just bear in mind. But for mitts like this, it's perfect because they are, I would say, they're really windproof. So they're going to be really nice and cosy for her. Look how it glows. They're mad, aren't they? I mean, they're absolutely mad. The colour's bonkers, but I just love it. And I'll have loads left over. I don't know how much they will have used. I'll have to weigh them. But I'll have loads left over. I'm sure I'd have enough actually for 2 pairs. So just so fun. So, if you've got a skein of this alpaca stuff in your stash, I would say pull it out and double it with something, because it is really nice. You'd have to do probably a gauge swatch just to work out what's going to work for you. But super lovely fingerless mitts. So I'm going to get this other one finished, and these will be a gift for Bryony's birthday, which is coming up fairly soon. Dan Jones?
Yes.
What's on your needles?
It's a mitten. Is it a mitten?
It's a full mitten.
I was just checking.
It is a mitten. It was so sweet. We were knitting last night, weren't we, in bed, and we were both knitting thumbs.
Yes.
Oh.
I know, it really was.
It was really cute. I said, oh my goodness, we're both knitting thumbs.
Yes. I love knitting thumbs.
Oh, he kept saying this to me. I love knitting thumbs. I love knitting thumbs. I'm like, what's wrong with you, man?
I've only done 4 thumbs before. 2 on the Susan B. Anderson mittens that I knitted.
Oh, yes.
Years and years ago.
Yeah.
And then 2 recently when I finished the Stana mitts. And then, these really are the 2 that I count, because I was so sort of out on a limb. I mean, I knitted Susan's pattern because it was brilliantly written, and I had great help from Kate, and it was great and I loved it. But I wasn't quite at that point where I was capable of understanding quite what I was doing.
Right.
And so it just wasn't, it didn't seem to me a sensible thing to carry on with the whole mitt knitting thing. So put mitts to bed for a bit, and then started on them again with the Stana mitts really early on this year.
Yeah.
Loved that process, and then cracked on now with these pieces of home, which I'll show you in a second. And this actually is the first time I've knitted fingering weight thumbs.
Right.
And I don't know if there's a novelty in that, but it brings me so much immense joy.
Why?
I have no idea. I think there might be an element of the whole turning of the heel with the sock.
Right.
Because it is a bit like, oh, look.
I guess, yeah.
Also, though, I think because I'm quite large and the mitt isn't, it's smaller.
Yeah,
I think it fascinates me that my enormous hands are producing
because there's
something
only
quite small.
20 odd stitches on your thumb, wasn't there?
Yes.
And that's, on DPNs, you've only got a few stitches on each, and it's quite octopusy.
Yes.
Dealing with it.
James Bond. These are for our daughter Bryony. Yes, she said she'll wear them.
She has said she'll wear them. Yeah, after me saying about she prefers fingerless mitts, she had said she'll wear them.
On walks and things, I know.
Yeah. That is true. She will wear them now.
She'll also wear them because she knows that it'll make me happy.
Yes, that, yeah.
Which is bad. It shouldn't do, should it?
No.
I'll say to her, wear them if you want to, if they're comfortable. But if you don't wear them, you're no longer my daughter. No, I'm only joking. Okay, look at the thumb. I mean, look at it. Oh my goodness. Oh.
It is meant to be plain.
Yeah.
She could have put a bit of pattern.
She could have put a bit of pattern in, but look, it doesn't matter. Because, I've had a certain amount of fun and games with this pattern, and I talk about it in my upcoming self-contained knitter. 1st of November, self-contained knitter is back, baby. I've had a few issues with this pattern, and just because I've not fully understood how she's explained certain things, like, for example, the Latvian braids, resulted in me creating the Dan braid, which is fun. But, you know, it would have been nice if I'd actually done a Latvian braid. But knitting with Crazy Zauberball, so it's Crazy Zauberball is the contrast.
Yes.
And the grey is Viking yarn, Baby Uld. That sounds like the name of a Viking warrior's baby.
Yeah,
Uld.
it's colour 312. And we don't really like this yarn, do we?
That's the royal we.
Well, I haven't actually knit with it, but I have corrected some.
Oh, you think back.
Yes.
Because I knitted the wrong. I did something weird.
Yeah.
I did something weird. So Kay has had some experience in
Yeah.
ticking this back. I've obviously had a lot of experience in knitting that mitt and also this one.
Yeah, and you just got the thumb.
I've just picked up the stitches on the thumb there. And the issue with the yarn is with the grey yarn. I mean, to be fair, neither of these yarns are well suited to colour work.
No, I wouldn't
The Crazy
say.
Zauberball in particular is extremely not suited to colour
It's
work.
quite loosely spun, isn't it, the Zauberball, I find?
It is, and
And it's a 2-ply
it's
as
not very
well.
grippy.
No.
It's quite slippy.
Yeah.
But that's what I wanted. Because
Challenge.
I've developed this technique, which we mentioned last time, which I'll be sharing in a tutorial next month. And with this technique, I found that with pretty much every yarn that I've come up against so far, I'm able to get a really good looking fabric. Now, this has been a learning curve for me just because it's fingering weight, and I've not knitted with fingering weight before. But the technique has worked because, you know, you're not losing single stitches. And, you know, here on the other side, the real telltale sign, is here and here.
Oh yeah, the
'cause that's
single
where-
stitches.
Those single stitches,
Yeah.
that's where, if your technique's not right, they're either going to
They'll
be
just-
shooting out at you,
or they'll disappear.
or they'll disappear.
Yeah.
To get them sat pretty much.
And this
once
has
it's
not been blocked either.
No, it's not been blocked yet. So
So it's a good colourwork job, definitely.
Kay deliberately selected for me bad yarns for colour work, which really...
Well, the pattern recommends Zauberball. It does use
interesting.
Zauberball. I'm sure it does.
Yeah, I'm sure you're right. Yeah,
I'm
it
sure
does.
it's a Zauberball that the pattern uses.
Well, I wouldn't recommend.
Because you get that graduated effect, which is lovely,
colour's
isn't
immense.
it? It's lovely, the way it changes colour. I love that.
I just, you know, when you compare this yarn to, I've just knitted with the Blacker Swan for the Starner mitts.
Oh, yes.
Like Blacker Swan's brilliant for colour work.
Yes.
And also the yarn I'm using for the Hadrian's KAL is that really is good for colour work. I think you dyed
Because-
that though, didn't you?
No.
Oh no, you didn't.
Not that one.
Of course I didn't.
That's the
That's
other-
Regia Merino Yak.
It was the other cowl that I dyed.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, the Viking yarn, the grey, it's quite a loose...
Super
loosely,
splitty.
Yeah, it's very splitty.
A challenging knit,
Yeah,
most definitely.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a very pleasant yarn, but it was very cheap, I think. I just wanted to give it a go, you know, you've got to give these things a go, haven't you?
What I would say to you is, you know, I wouldn't sort of go out and choose to knit with this again, but if I had to knit with it again for some reason, I would.
Yeah.
It's not like, oh my goodness, that was so terrible, I don't want anything to do with it. Not like that Rico stuff that I tried.
That was horrible.
I can't remember, was it Rico Essentials? Rico...
Yeah, something like that. Something Aaron...
Really awful.
Something.
Really
Right,
awful.
right.
So it's not that bad, but, you know, there's better choices out there, I think. All in all, though, on what had been a slightly challenging project, because the thumb has been so much fun, I'm sort of left with a sort of underlying feeling of joy with this pan.
Yeah, you've
And
enjoyed it.
I do love what she's done
I
there.
like the little thing on the thumb there. That's quite sweet.
That's
isn't
really
it?
nice. But perhaps it would have been nice
If it had just carried on a
even if
little
there's just
bit.
something little in the middle and then it like came to
Yeah.
life again at the top or something.
Yeah.
Just anything.
Something could have been done, I think.
I laughed when I saw the chart for the thumb.
Yeah, the other...
She should have just written knit 21 rounds.
and then do some
decrease.
decreases. Yeah, there's no need for
Instead
a chart.
of charting
There's no
it.
need for a chart when there's no colour work, and it's. But anyway, the other thing with the thumb is it's oddly placed. I find if you look at the place, I mean, I think this is quite traditional for this sort of a mitt.
is.
But you know, the thumb it sits there. You know, what I mean, it sits here. But if you think about where your thumb is, it comes out of the side of your hand, doesn't it? It doesn't come out of your hand here. So when you put it on, what happens is it pulls. It pulls all of the work here pulls over to the thumb.
And it's actually clumping up this side.
And then it sort of bunches.
Yeah.
It bunches over the other side. You see, when I knit a thumb, or when I've designed a few mitts, I always make sure the thumb is right on the
side.
It comes out of the side here because that's where your thumb is.
Yeah.
But I do think this is traditional for this shape of a mitt.
So do I.
Yeah.
But it's the pieces of home mitt, all in all, knit through it all now, and I've perfectly enjoyed it. I don't think I'd knit them again. But I don't often knit patterns again.
No, that's true.
Very pleasant experience, and lovely. And looking forward to my next fingering weight mitt, but I haven't finished both of these yet.
No.
But I will have done very soon.
But you do have plans?
I do. Okay. Yes. What else is on your needles?
So it's my Sockoween socks.
Lovely.
I've finished one and I'm on the second one.
And the dye job is just knitting up amazing.
Well, if you remember, it's been interesting. This is the yarn I dyed on the last My Favourite Colourways. So it's the Nocturne Alley and the name of the shop, whatever it was.
That's Borgin and Burke's.
There we go. And I said at the time after I dyed it that I thought it might knit up a bit, a bit spooky and do a few naughty things just because of the way that I dyed it. But I did that deliberately because these are Halloween socks and they're spooky, and if they do something a bit freaky, that's totally fine. I was quite cool with that.
But they're not.
But actually, no, but look. No. Look in the daylight, look in the daylight.
So the people.
So I'll show you the first one. And I have done what I said I was going to do. I finished the first sock, and if you remember last time, I said that the purple dye wasn't showing very much in that first sock. It doesn't matter because it's perfectly lovely. I mean, look. And it actually, if you look closely, it is doing a swirly thing. But because the colours are sort of close, it's not as obvious. But if you look on the foot here, can you see it is doing a swirly thing? There are areas, I can't get my finger to go in the right direction, but you can see the sort of stripes of like more orange. I can't get it right, it's going the wrong way, but there's stripes of orange, and then there's the stripes without the sort of orange and with more purpley shades.
It's like reversing around the corner.
I could never do that, reversing around a corner, and I still can't do it. And I tell you what,
don't.
The only way that I managed to pass my driving test for the reversing round a corner thing was just before I had my driving test, I went on a last lesson. I think instructors tend to do that.
Yeah.
And I did the exact route and the exact things that I did on my test half an hour later. So I reversed around the same corner.
Was that luck, or did he pay him off?
I don't know. I reversed around the same corner. I reverse parked in the same spot. I hill started in the same spot. It was like, I cannot believe this.
It's fate.
It was my second attempt. I did fail the first time, but Anyway, back to the sock. Yes, isn't it just fabulous? Oh my goodness, I love it, like hugely large amounts.
I failed the first time too.
You failed about the first 6 times, I seem to recall. How many times did you fail, my darling? Is he looking a little bit sheepish? Would you like to tell everybody how many times you failed?
No, I don't think we should talk about it.
And it's weird because I don't like driving and I passed relatively easily. And Dan drives all the time and doesn't mind driving.
I have a great appreciation for it because I had to work harder for it.
So here's my first sock, and I put in my crunkled pattern. Hold it. Oh, look at that. But I added in my butterfly heel, and the butterfly heel is like a mock short row heel. It's currently in my lattice top sock pattern, if you'd like to give it a go. However, I am putting it in another pattern which will be coming out sometime in November, and that's the rumple socks. The rumple socks will have 2 heels. It'll have this one, the butterfly heel.
Not in the same sock?
No. 2 options for a heel. You can knit either the butterfly heel or you can knit a standard heel flap. and turn, and both of the instructions are in the rumple pattern, and that pattern will be out sometime November, hopefully. But yeah, so love it, love the sock. So what I did for the second, if you remember last time, I said, where's all this purple? Where's all the purple dye gone? So I said, I'm going to wind the yarn in the opposite direction. I'm going to knit the other sock from the other end of the ball, of the skein. And that's, I did debate this because I loved the way that this knitted up so much. I thought, oh, shall I just carry on and have them as matching as I can? And then I'm like, no, I'm not, because I want to see where this purple's gone. Where is it gone? So I did wind it in the opposite direction, and you can see a lot more purple. So here's the skein. So you can see, look, all of those purple shades, can't you? And not so much there that's now in the centre. So I started knitting this sock from that other end, and there is a lot more purple in it, but it's not massively different. So I'm only this far in. I just cast this on yesterday, but I'm only this far in. But can you see? It's a lot more purpley, isn't it? And gorgeous, I've got to say. But when you hold them together, you can see a difference. This one is definitely more purple hued, but they don't look terribly dissimilar, I don't think. They'll still look like a pair, won't they?
It doesn't even look remotely dissimilar.
No,
it looks completely like a pair.
Yeah, but when you look at them, you can see, look.
You can, but it's so subtle, really. It looks like a really good quality, great fun dye job.
Well, it's actually been brilliant because I love the way that this is dyed up so much, and I know what technique I used, and you know what technique I used because you saw me dye it. You could actually then employ that same technique and just substitute different colours in, and come up with all sorts of things, if you like the way that this is dyed up. And I love it. So I'll definitely be using that technique again. I'll probably have to go back and watch my video because I dye that many different techniques that I sort of struggle to remember which I've done where. But yeah, I love these socks, and I think they're just coming out so pretty. So I want to get these done if I can by the end of October for Sockoween, but I'm obviously not entering for prizes, so it doesn't matter.
That'd be a bit rich.
And
the winner is me.
I know. And Bryony loves these, so I'm sure they will go to Bryony, although I absolutely love them. And it's not often I think, oh, I really want those socks, but I do kind of really want these. But I'll probably end up giving them to her. But, saying that, I'd have enough, I think, to make like some shorties. I've been wearing, do you know the ones I told you I've been wearing? The Malabrigo Ultimate Sock ones that I knit recently, and they're shorties, and I've been wearing those at night.
This is the pair that Kay is showing you how to knit in her Absolute Beginner Magic Loop.
That's right.
Tutorials.
And there is a basic pattern it's a full pattern. I say basic pattern. It's a full pattern for that.
Exclusive to the series.
Yeah, for that shorty sock. Yeah. It's just 20 rounds on the leg. And actually I've been wearing those at night time with my pyjamas, and they've just been perfect. So I think I would have enough left over just to make some shorty socks, because there's obviously plenty of the beautiful orange. So I'll probably do that. But yeah, gorgeous, really gorgeous socks. I'm really enjoying them. Oh,
I've just been knitting lace live on the show.
Gorgeous socks. Have you really?
Yeah. I seriously was like feeling the...
Did you mess up?
I did not mess up.
All right. Okay.
I was feeling the sort of the stress of it.
Were you?
Yes. When you're like trying to get to the end of a row, I'm always like panicking that she's going to like ask me a question or say something and I'm going to have to speak. And I don't know about you, but if I'm in the middle of a lace row, the concentration... I mean, are you like that too?
It depends on the type of lace, but generally, I wouldn't want anybody talking to me if I was knitting lace.
Because then suddenly you forget where you are. And I mean, I'm a lot better now. It's the Moss Eccles socks. I'm a lot better at reading.
These are lovely.
Knitting.
These will be finished soon as well.
I've learned more about reading, knitting these socks. Honestly, I have.
No, they're beautiful. But you know what
the designers helped me. Sorry, go on.
With these socks is we should keep them as part, and I'll use them in Bryony's advent calendar.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Because she will have forgotten about them. You'll finish them by Christmas, won't you?
Yeah.
You've only got not very much.
No.
That would be a fantastic present because she loves yellow. She was looking for some yellow socks the other day.
So lovely motorcycle socks, done a longer leg because these are going to go inside her yellow Doc Martens, which is really great. So that was the first sock, which I finished a little while ago. This is the second sock. And in the first sock, I did make a couple of mistakes. And that was the sort of soul-searching sock that has sort of led me to understand more about how I need to approach my sock knitting. So normally rotate through projects. I don't really with socks now. I keep them always on the go a little bit. So I'll always be doing a little bit on it. Because otherwise, I just seem to lose the technique. And I do think it's the big hand, small needles thing and small yarn. I do really enjoy it. I don't know what it is. I feel like it's proper knitting when it's fingering weight.
Yeah, I feel a bit like that as well. Well, with socks, I do feel a bit like that.
I don't just mean with socks.
Oh, really?
I mean with everything.
Oh, no, I don't with everything. But if I'm knitting socks, it's funny, I really like DK socks, and I've actually got some to show you later. But whenever I'm knitting them, I always wish I was knitting fingering weight socks.
Yeah,
it's funny,
I would.
Isn't it?
I just wouldn't knit a DK weight sock anymore.
Would you not?
No, I'd only do fingering weight.
Yeah, and they do get worn, but nowhere near as much as fingering weight socks.
I'll wear my DK weight socks when it's like middle of winter.
Yeah, and Bryony does have a few pairs, but even like on a weekend when we're just in the house or whatever, she'll still only put on a fingering weight pair. She wouldn't really put on a DK weight.
DK weight socks are a brilliant stepping stone in your journey to learn to knit socks.
Absolutely, they are.
And, you know, if you love slipper socks, then you might always be knitting DK weight socks.
Absolutely, and they're quick, you know, they are quick.
So I really love the fact that I knitted DK weight socks and I used that to get to this point, but now I definitely wouldn't.
There's just something about socks knit with sock weight yarn, you know, with fingering weight yarn. They're just so satisfying. And these are just so lovely. This yarn's gorgeous.
For me, though, there's something about anything knitted in fingering weight. I think if you have a good gauge...
Well, it's a finer product, isn't it?
Yes.
So because it's
there's a lot more stitches to the inch.
Yeah, it feels like a finer fabric. And finer fabrics generally feel a bit more luxurious, don't they, than thicker, heavyweight fabrics.
And certainly historically, maybe it's just me when I've been looking... You know, if I was like looking to buy a sweater in a shop, I would always go for a thinner weight yarn.
Yeah.
And you always get much more... You can get much more intricate designs, can't you? And there can be much more fun stuff potentially going on subtly sometimes on a fingering weight, because, you know, if you do a few twists and turns in fingering weight, it's nowhere near as sort of stand out-ish.
No.
As on...
Like a thicker, chunkier weight.
Yeah. So that's all leading me to the point of...
You want to knit a fingering weight jumper?
Well, I'm sort of feeling that a little bit.
Right.
But I don't know. We'll wait and see.
Well, 4-ply, I would go 4-ply rather than... You see, 4-ply, I don't think 4-ply is the same weight as fingering weight. Because, you know, traditionally in this country, going back not even that long, we didn't have fingering weight. It went 4-ply and then went down to lace weight. And 4-ply was something that you knit generally sort of baby knits with. My mum would say, I think, that she would use 4-ply for baby knits, but she didn't really like knitting with 4-ply because it took longer and it was thinner. If you bought a ball of, say, for example, Rowan 4-ply, something or other, it would be, I think it would be much thicker than a fingering weight. I think 4-ply is more like what would be now classed as a sport weight. I think it's closer to a sport weight than it is a fingering weight.
Yeah.
Depends on the brand, obviously, but yeah.
So that is my motorcycle sock. Heel turned, knitting down the foot, toe to do, finished. Kay Jones, what else is on your needles?
Well, oh my goodness. Right.
Oh my goodness.
So, the last
What's going on with this?
Yeah, well, I don't think this is going to carry on in the form that it's currently in. But I'm going to show you. I wasn't even going to show you. I was just going to rip out my idea and forget about it. But I'm going to show you because... You know, these things are a process, aren't they? And sometimes something doesn't quite feel right. And
look, people love, you know, one of the things that we were asked for so much from our Bakery Bear patrons is a series all about how you approach designing stuff. You know, the highs and the lows.
Yeah.
And this definitely fits in that sort of design diary.
Yeah, it definitely does. And
which is your series all about designs, of course.
Yeah, this this is the Mitred Square project that I spoke about a few episodes back, and it's moved on to the sort of next stage, but for various reasons I'm just not feeling it. But I'm going to show you it, and I'm going to tell you what my idea was, and then you might all say, oh, carry on with it, but I don't think I'm going to, and I'll tell you why.
I think you should always follow your gut with that.
Yeah. So if you remember, I knit these Mitred squares. This is what it looks like currently. And here was where, so it was a flat piece of work. These are all the Mitred squares, if you remember them. Now, my idea was that I was going to turn this into a wrap. And I was going to do that by knitting 2 identical pieces. So there would be another Mitred square piece, the same as this. And then what I've done is I've picked up stitches all along the top edge, and I've joined in the round. You can see this is where it starts and stops, and I've joined in the round. And then my idea was I was going to use all of these different colours that I've used within it, and the brown as well, just to stripe in stocking stitch in various widths of stripe, just randomly. I wasn't going to have any format to it. Just whenever I fancied changing yarn, I was just going to change the colour and knit some more. And I was going to knit 2 of these and then graft them together, so that what you would have is a wrap with mitered squares at either end, and then stocking stitch stripes of all the colours running through the wrap. You know, and as I've said it now, I still quite like the idea. But a few things happened when I got sort of knitting on this bit here. First of all, I didn't account for the fact, because I just thought I will seam this here. I'll just seam those 2 edges together. But I forgot that the 2 edges are different. So one edge is the end of the garter stitch rows, but the other edge is the cast on edge for all of the mitered squares. So although I could mattress stitch them, I can absolutely do it. It makes it quite fiddly because you're not mattress stitching to the same edges on either side. So that was the first thing where I thought, don't know about that. I don't know if I want to do that for starters, and I don't know whether I'm just happy with the fact that I'm doing that and how it would look. And then when I picked up stitches, that wasn't a problem at all. That was a doddle. Picking up stitches, absolutely not a doddle. It was a breeze. And I can't remember exactly how many stitches I've got there, but my first thought was that it's a higher number than I would normally cast on for a cowl, for example. So I thought I would do it on a 24-inch needle. So I think I've got a couple of them in here. So yeah, I thought I would use a 24-inch. This is a 24-inch. And just knit in the round on that. So I think I tried a chowgo at first, because that's one I had in my stash, my needle stash. Didn't like the chowgo, can't think why. So I ordered a Nova, a Knit Pro Nova. These are quite difficult to find these days, just the plain Nova that's not cubics. But I ordered one of these. This one actually is a 40 centimetre case, because that's what I'm using now, but this is a 60 centimetre. But I really did not like knitting in the round on these needles. And the reason is because the needle tips are the standard, I think they're like 5-inch, aren't they? 5-inch needle tips. And it felt like I should be knitting with the shorter needles of a hat size needle of the 16-inch, 40 centimetre size. It just felt weird, because your needles are longer when you've got it like that. It's not actually in a round. It was moving the stitches around was a bother. I really disliked it. So I thought, right, okay, my last thing to try is just to put it onto a hat size needle, so a 40 centimetre. And that's what I've done now, and they do fit quite comfortably. There isn't a higher number than I would normally have on a 40 centimetre, but it fits. And I can happily work around like it's a cowl. But what then I realised was that actually this already is quite heavy. So by the time I'm getting further through, it's going to get heavier and heavier. And I just don't know if I want to deal with that weight. And I think I do get this dodgy shoulder sometimes, and I just think the weight of it might be too much. So all of those things together really have made me think that, it's just maybe not what I want to do. So I think, in all honesty, what I'm going to do is just rip that back so it's the piece of mitered square again, and then just decide if I'm going to carry on and knit some more mitered squares, and I might turn it into a cushion, or I don't know. I mean, what else could it be? It's a cushion or a blanket, really, isn't it? I mean, I don't know what else you could do with a piece of mitered square work. But, I think I'm just going to have a think about it. But I wanted to tell you what my plans were for it, because sometimes, I have a billion ideas, and a lot of those ideas, like anybody who does creative work, you have lots of ideas and some of them don't work out, and you just have to chalk it up to experience, and move on.
You learn something from every project.
You do learn something from everything, and, I've learned in this instance that I really do not like 24-inch... I've seen some people knit socks, I think, on 24 inches. I don't even know how, as magic loop. I don't even know if that's possible.
It'd be tight, wouldn't it?
Yeah, and I've also discovered that some 24-inch are actually not as long as others. I think the Chowgu one was a slightly different length, and I think it depends. I think the needle tip size might have been slightly different, but I think it's just the angles. I didn't like how.
No.
Because the needles were longer, it just wasn't gelling with me.
Rip it out.
So I think I'm going to rip this back,
cool,
put it back to the mitered square piece, and then just decide whether I'm going to do anything with it. At the end of the day, I loved knitting the mitered squares. It was really fun. And if ultimately this turns into a cushion, well, that's fine, isn't it? Because I've got mitered square cushions all over the place. Yeah. And we use them all the time, and they're beautiful, and that's great. It's been fun whilst I've been doing it. I've enjoyed it, and it's a good experience. So,
right.
Yeah.
The moment has come. 36 years ago, I went for my very first trip to Hadrian's Wall. It was to Chester's Fort, which we visited we didn't visit, we had a look at it in the second episode of Walking the Wall. And that started for me a lifelong love of not just Rome, but also history. But what that also has led to is Hadrian's Wall having a very close place in my heart, a very special place in my heart. And what's funny is, it's always been exactly the same for you. So this year, in its anniversary year, 1,900 years since it was built, we knew it was the perfect time to tell its story from its conception right the way through to its heyday. But now it's time for its final chapter. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Walking the Wall. Welcome everyone to Northumberland. This is perhaps my favourite county in all of England. Rolling hills make some absolutely wonderful vistas and gorgeous landscapes to look out on, and scattered in between those hills are some of the most unique and unforgettable little villages. In this series, over 7 walks, we're exploring Hadrian's Wall, the epic monument built by the Romans nearly 2,000 years ago to mark the edge of their vast empire. As we walk this gorgeous landscape, we're finding out what an awesome job they did. Our constant companion throughout this series has been the vast Valum Hadriani. This was the ditch which protected the south side of the 73-mile wall which stretched from coast to coast. But that was just the start of this monumental piece of engineering. We visited enigmatic turrets, discovered the story behind the many mile castles along the line of the wall, and last time we walked through one of the most archaeologically rich landscapes I've ever seen. Today we're back with one last walk as we tell the story of the end of Hadrian's Wall and Roman Britain. As that end approached, the wall and all its spectacular forts changed dramatically. Britannia was edging towards a time we know today as the Dark Ages. The funny thing is though, as more and more archaeological work is done in this area, it's been discovered that after Roman rule ended, life pretty much carried on as it always had done. But eventually, change did come. But my goodness, it was pretty spectacular when it arrived. That building behind me, that's not Roman, that's a medieval castle. And every castle needs a heroic knight. Let me tell you that the knight who lived here was beyond heroic. He was an absolute legend. This is the walk when we'll say goodbye to the Roman era and we'll enter the era of castles and chivalry. Welcome to Walking the Wall. Welcome back everyone to Northumberland. 6 episodes ago we started out on what has turned out to be an absolutely epic quest to discover the story of Hadrian's Wall, and I can't quite believe we finally reached Journey's End. Today we've come to a gorgeous place actually. We're about 1.5 miles northeast of the really lovely village of Greenhead. It's perfect for any of you wanting to come here on holiday, and we'll actually see more of that later on in the show. The landscape today though, it's probably the most varied that we've seen all series, and I've picked it specially for the end of this amazing story, and I really can't wait to show it to you. This is Walltown Country Park, and whilst it looks rather lovely, and it is rather lovely, for about 100 years it really wasn't lovely at all. If I took you back to 1975, the year I was born, this was the heart of a huge quarry. Dynamite was used to blast rock straight out of the Great Windsill itself. This was for the ever-expanding road network which had been developing over the decades prior to that date. It's sort of beyond comprehension, isn't it, that we would, in my lifetime, have sort of treated something as important as Hadrian's Wall with such absolute disdain, because that blasting was done literally directly underneath Hadrian's Wall. They blasted it completely away. Now, the thing is, the reason why that was done and why no one really gave it a thought at that time was because if I took you about 1.5 miles west of here, we'd get to a place called Thirlwall Castle. That's a medieval castle built about 1,000 years ago, solely out of Hadrian's Wall stone. And if you think about it, we've discovered that lots in this series, that really since the Romans left here, this part of the world has been used as a ready-made quarry with stone ready to take away and build. But you know what's interesting is we're stood here where the wall should be and it's gone. Down there there's obviously the castle which I've mentioned, but if I took you a mile in that direction, we'd be back into the countryside which we've come to know and love in this series, with the wall sat firmly at its heart. It's the perfect landscape to finish our adventure. It lays out before us all the things really that happened when the Romans were here, when the Romans left, and what's happened since that date. It's the perfect place to end our adventure. And today's walk starts just up here. When this series began back in January, one of the first things that we discovered, 35 miles west, directly, not west, east, west that way, 35 miles east of here, was the Vallum. That was that huge defensive ditch that the Romans built to protect the south side of the wall. And I'm really excited to tell you, because the only time that we walked in it or on it was on that first walk. Well, today, look down there, look, this is the Vallum. Yes, we're finishing how we started, and our walk is going to start out picking up the line. I'm walking on top of the bank now. I'm now on my way down into the ditch, which has actually been turned into a road. And it's amazing to think, isn't it, that this was constructed 1,900 years ago. Oh, cattle grid. Tricky. I made it. That's not original Roman, of course. I've picked up a farm track, you may have noticed actually. Now, this farm track is obviously not Roman, but this farm track is built right in and on the line of the Vallum. And it really is, it's amazing to see, because when you look at it this way, and I think I've only walked, like I mentioned, I only walked along it once, way back in episode 1. You can really see how the Roman engineers have picked the perfect spot, because the great wind sill, which of course Hadrian's Wall was once sat on top of, is to my left. They've positioned the Vallum right here, and it just makes use of a natural lay in the land, so it probably didn't take much digging. So, as I pull down my Moordale hat, it's a funny old day today. When the wind blows, it really is quite chilly. But then when it's still, it's not. It's a funny one, but I think I've dressed perfectly. And yes, I have covered myself from head to foot, even though it is October. I've covered myself with Skin So Soft, because I'm not being bitten today. But yes, we've sallied forth from the car park, and we're heading east. We're following the line of the Vallum. We're walking parallel with the wall. We're going to walk about a mile up here. We're then going to turn left, and we're going to take the short hop up onto the wall. And let me tell you, up there, it truly is spectacular. It's one of, I mean, I know I've said this a lot, but this section I know more than any other. We've come here more than any other. This really is the place that inspired the whole series, and it's spectacular up there. As we climb up to the line of the wall, 828 feet above sea level, it's worth stopping to consider, what was the world like here on the line of Hadrian's Wall towards the end of the Roman Empire? Well, as the year 309 AD dawned, I'm absolutely certain that the men who lived and worked here would have had no idea that they were coming into the last 100 years of Roman rule. And who were those men? Well, they were the great-great-great-grandsons of the men who had first come and settled here, because as we found out in this series, the cohorts that were based on the wall didn't really move. But what these ancestors of those original Romans would have experienced, archaeological digs have actually shown us that previously wine and olive oil and garum was imported from different parts of the empire, from the parts of the empire that, you know, made it the absolute best. But those imports, they disappear in this last 100 years of Roman rule. Now, don't get me wrong, the Romans are still wanting their olive oil and their wine and their garum, but they're replacing them with locally sourced alternatives. The vallum is actually veered off to my right, and it's heading off across the country past all the sites that we've walked through this series. So I think we might as well get away from the vallum now and get up to the good stuff up on Hadrian's Wall. As we get close to the line of the wall up this unbelievably steep hill, it's worth just considering actually what this place looked like in 309 BC, and it's completely different, of course, to today, because the wall would, of course, have been towering above us. There would have been farmsteads dotted all over the landscape, farming crops and also livestock to feed the communities. And the communities were vast because, of course, you had the men and their families who were garrisoning the wall. Every 7 miles you had a fort, which was like a bustling city, really was the beating heart of the communities. But things were starting to look a little tired. It had been, well, the wall itself was nearly 200 years old now, and it had been 100 years since there'd been any significant improvements. But still, the men who worked here took great pride in their job. This was still the border between Rome and safety and the barbarians who lived beyond. And actually, when you stop and look around, places to work don't really get much better than this. This really is one of my favourite sections of the wall. When I think back to all the trips that I've made here over the years, it's this section that calls to me more than any other. I don't really know why. There's just something hauntingly beautiful about walking here. It's just stunning. And there's just so much to see here. Do you remember that turret that we saw on our third walk? Well, you might think that we're about to see another in just a moment, but we're not. This is so much more than just a turret. It's really quite an exciting piece of archaeology. So you can clearly see actually when you stood inside this turret that it's a very different type of structure to anything that we've seen in the series so far. And the telltale signs are, if you look behind me over my shoulder, you can actually see that the wall butts up against the side of the turret. Previously, the wall would have run in line with the northern wall of the turret, not running up against the side wall. That tells us, it's a telltale sign that this structure was here before the wall was here, which means it can only be one thing, and that is a signal tower. The other thing as well that tells us that it was a signal tower is the views from here are just spectacular. You can see in just about every direction. So what would you do if you saw a problem on the horizon? At the top of the tower there was a huge fire in a brazier, and you would light it, and that would tell the forts at Magnus behind me, and also it would tell a signal tower on the great windsill ridge just over there to light up as well. And before you know it, within minutes, Vindolanda and also Housted's Verkevicium, which we visited earlier on in the series, would also know that problems were coming. And trouble was definitely on the horizon for the Roman Empire. As we discovered on our last walk, those Germanic sea raiders were causing trouble north of the wall and also south of the wall as well. And then when you added to that, those painted warriors, the Picti from north of the wall, things around here had really started to become quite dangerous. But the garrison still held out. They still managed to keep things under control. What brought things to a head was actually the declaration of a new Roman emperor. That happened just down the road at Eberacum, or York as we know it today. His name was Constantine, and he'd actually just left Hadrian's Wall when he was declared a Roman emperor. The problem Constantine had was that someone else had claimed that title as well. And for him to become Roman emperor, he was going to have to meet that other person, that other claimant to the throne in battle. Suddenly, there was substantially less Roman soldiers walking the streets of Roman Britain looking for somewhere to spend their money. You might remember that vicus that we visited. Do you remember? At Verkevicium, there was a pub with some bodies buried under the floorboards. Well, after Constantine recruited his army, suddenly there was no money being spent in these places, and if shops and pubs and restaurants don't have customers, they close, and that's what happened. Archaeological evidence shows us that every one of the vicuses just disappeared. What happened was those shops moved to more centralised locations. There's a town called Corbridge not far from here, and it absolutely boomed at this time, and it's because all the shopkeepers that had been working out at all the separate forts moved to one central location to create one great big city. You can't sort of imagine, can you, how suddenly removing all that bustle and all of that community from this part of the world must have had on how it felt here. Suddenly Hadrian's Wall must have felt a much more desolate place to live and work. What's also absolutely fascinating is you might recall that as the time progressed after the Romans arrived here in England, that they were permitted to have families, and they used to live in the vicuses outside the forts. As the years progressed now and we moved towards the end of Roman rule, this was positively encouraged because service in the army had become hereditary. So the arrival of a son meant another soldier who could, man this line of the wall. But with the sort of disappearance of the vicuses, the villages, which is where everyone used to live, what happened to those families? How did they
carry on living with, you know, in their family groups? The answer was they moved inside the forts. And we know this because archaeologists have found in the latter part of Roman rule female hairpins, not on the outside of the fort, but instead on the inside. This is it, folks. It's the end of the line. Up until 1876, the wall carried on. Right now, it looks like it disappears off into oblivion, doesn't it? But 1876, the quarry opened, and they literally blasted away the great wind sill that's behind me there, and gone was the next section of wall. It's at times like this that I think of John Clayton, who we've discovered many times through our series. The man who bought Chester's and then bought so many sections of the wall and then passed it on to English Heritage and the National Trust. Because without his work, who knows what would be left? Perhaps more of it would be like that. If it hadn't been for John, perhaps none of this amazing monument would be left for us to enjoy today. Whilst it's sad that the wall was blasted away and that it's gone, it's hard not to appreciate the beauty of what they've done here. I mean, it really is absolutely stunning, and it makes this section of the wall even more sort of wonderful to visit. But what's happened to the Romans? I hear you cry. What about our story? Well, fear not. Just southwest of here lies the site of Magnus Roman Fort, which we're going to discover in the second part of our walk as we chart the end of the Roman Empire and we discover what came next. But right now I'm going to grab a bite to eat. So whilst I do that, you guys head off for a little break, and I'll see you later on in the show with more Walking the Wall.
What a walk! And my goodness, what a story. In just Walltown Quarry itself. I mean, just fascinating.
Can you believe they did that?
God. I mean...
Admittedly, it's a beautiful place now. You know, they have really done an amazing job at it. You know,
and they continue to, actually.
A lot of people go walking just around that part of it.
Very popular spot. And what I saw, actually, in the process of being there filming was... It's the first walk that I've done where I've sort of seen the regular bus service which ferries people, you know, to and from certain spots, which I think is great. You know, there's nothing more reliable actually than a regular bus service, you know, that works, you know, and it was absolutely on the money every time. There was always a few people in it.
I mean, what's quite sort of poignant is where the wall just stops and then it's a sheer cliff face.
Crazy.
And that's the point where you can see it just, that's where it ends, and then it, you know, would have obviously carried on like that, and it's
They've just seen that.
It's just gone.
Literally just seen that spot.
I thought that was amazing, seeing that.
Perfect to tell the story that we're telling. You know, it just encapsulates all the elements of the final stages of the story of Hadrian's Wall, and that, what we've just seen, it's just the start. When we come back in part 2, this is where we get to the good stuff. We're going to go visit Magnus Fort, which is pretty impressive, and some great archaeological finds there. But then we're going to chart the end of one era and the beginning of a whole other one. But that's all to come in part 2. Because right now, it's time for me to ask, Kay Jones, what's off your needles?
Well, I have 2 things off my needles this time.
Some would say 3.
Technically, there's 3 items here.
I think 2 socks should be counted as 2.
There's 2 things.
They should.
It should really, shouldn't it? Yeah.
Knitting a sock's much more challenging than knitting a blanket.
Okay. Well, it is. Depends on the blanket, but generally
Yes,
it is.
yes.
But
It does
yeah,
depend on the blanket.
It does depend on the blanket. I have finished my bedtime blanket.
And it's already in use.
I've been using this for the past week and a half, I know. Every morning I've been...
perfect leg warmer.
It's absolutely the perfect thing. So, yeah, this is my bedtime blanket, look.
It is gorgeous.
It is, isn't it lovely? That I've been knitting, oh gosh, ages. Well, ages for me, probably, you know.
And you've loved every minute.
And I have, yeah. So it's in all these gorgeous shades of pink. Oh, isn't it fun? So what I did was I doubled 2 yarns. So strand of, obviously I doubled 2 yarns. If I'd doubled 4 yarns, then that's wrong, isn't it? I would have quadrupled. Oh, dearie me. Okay, so I held 2 yarns together, therefore doubling. Yeah, so I've got a strand of whatever shade of pink and then a strand of just undyed fingering weight. And in the end, I used about 4.5 skeins of the undyed and then the equivalent in 20 gram minis.
I just love it, actually. I love it.
So it's gorgeous and it's the perfect size for early morning knitting. And it's actually, in
The
hindsight...
colours are amazing.
In hindsight, it's probably a bit too wide.
Big enough for 2.
It kind of is. I think because I used 5mm needles, and if I was going to do it again, I probably would use maybe 4.5mm because it is, garter stitch stretchy, isn't it? But yeah, so it really, in hindsight, I think I could have knocked off like 20 stitches, and it still would have been a really nice size.
Lovely.
So yeah, that's all finished. So it was just garter stitch and it's just got this I-cord edge which is included within it. And I put this as a basic pattern into a Knitability, I think, didn't I?
You did?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's all done and lovely and in regular use. So that's the first thing. And then the other thing is I finished my DK weight. Oh, we're talking about DK weight socks.
These are stupendous.
I finished my DK.
It's the colours.
Look. Oh, how cool are they?
I mean, actually, in this circumstance, because I think if it was fingering weight, I think it'd just be too small. Because it's that little bit bigger, the green just pops like crazy.
It really pops.
I love it.
These are DK weight, but it's my Swirly Woo sock pattern. The Swirly Woo socks are for fingering weight, but all I've done here is I've used my DK weight pattern, which is the Choose Your House socks. I just used that as a basis and knit, just put the pattern into it, just substituted the pattern in, and it fits into the size medium on the Choose Your House socks.
Amazing.
So that's what these are, the 48 stitch. And I think they just look great.
Who are they for?
Well, these are going to go to Bryony again for a birthday, I
Cool.
think, just an extra little present. And hopefully she'll wear them at some point. But they're so witchy, aren't they? They're so witchy stocking.
I think the style will suck her in.
Yeah, and I used the Sheepsies or Skipja's Merino Soft yarn in the black and then this bright green. I can't remember the exact colours, but it'd be obvious if you went to buy them which the 2 colours were. And they're all finished, and it's funny actually when we spoke about DK weight socks being quick, and they are quick, but actually I don't gravitate towards knitting them, and because I don't gravitate towards them, they tend to take longer than they should. Because I'm just like, I'd rather knit fingering weight socks than DK weight socks. It's weird, isn't it? It is weird. I don't know if that's just me or what it is. But in this case, I think they turned out gorgeous.
Perfect.
And really shows off the swirly pattern.
Yeah.
So they're all done as well.
Love it. Folks, my goodness, I can't believe it. After so many months, and I do feel slightly emotional.
Aww.
After so many months and years really of work, just thinking about the equipment just needed to film this show. For example,
you really
in that first half,
upgraded a lot, didn't we?
Yeah, because the final walk in the last series of Walking the Dale / Moors that we did was the day that we realised we had to, if we were going to do this series, we had to specifically improve the drone that we use, because the wind on that walk where poor Kevin got blown away was about half the strength of the wind that you saw just in that first part. And Stuart was flying like a good one. He was zooming around, not batting an eyelid. So look, I've preambled enough. I sort of don't want to introduce it because it is the end. But yes, this is it, the final part. Our journey is about to conclude. Let's head back to Walking the Wall.
Welcome back to Walking the Wall and the gorgeous Walltown Country Park, which is of course where Hadrian's Wall once used to come straight through at a much higher level than this, of course, though, because they've just blown away the Great Wind Sill. Thanks to Ordnance Survey maps, we actually know the line of the wall, and this path has been put right on it. And we're actually walking past the site. There's nothing to see, obviously, because it was up there and it's been exploded now. But we're walking past the site of Turret 45B. Now, as the end of the Roman Empire began to arrive, some of the things that started to happen really were quite dramatic, and one of the most sort of striking was the once wealthy Roman system, you know, the bureaucratic system, suddenly run out of money. And so the really quite expensive repairs, you know, something like this needed a lot of money investing into it. And suddenly, if you've got no soldiers spending money in the shops, you've got limited taxation, suddenly there's no money left to undertake those repairs. That created a problem because wood is flammable, and the Scotti and the Picts from the barbarian side of the wall, they saw their opportunity and they took it. It also looks like at this moment that they started working with the Germanic tribes who had now become known as the Saxons, and attacks started taking place not just here at Hadrian's Wall but everywhere, and it wasn't just in England too. So an army was sent from Rome. It actually turned out to be the last one, and they came and they saw and they conquered. And you've got to wonder if the people who lived here thought that perhaps life would return to normal and everything would be fine. Unfortunately, that was not to be the case. So we've left the quarry behind, but we're following the line of the wall. That's the fighting ditch, actually. How cool is that? So the fighting ditch is there, and the wall, you can just see that sort of earthwork there behind. That would have been the wall itself. And we're off in search of the people who used to live here and man the wall, so man the turrets that we've seen today. Now, the place that they lived was a fort called Magnus, and it lies just down here. The cohort of bowmen who lived here were from Syria. I mean, can you imagine what that must have been like? My goodness, so far away from home. And that was actually very rare at Roman times, to base people quite that distance away from where they were originally from. But the Syrian bowmen were so amazing at what they did, there were cohorts of them put all over the empire. Now, loads of archaeological digs have been done here at Magnus because it was such an important place. And loads of amazing things have been found, but my favourite of everything that's been found is this. You're looking at a copper vessel that dates from about 85 AD, and this was used by a vendor, a shopkeeper in Magnus. So he would have had a little shop in Magnus Fort, and he would use that vessel to measure out corn for people who are coming in to buy corn that they could then go and eat. Now, I think that's just outstanding, because probably a stone's throw from where I'm walking now, the man or woman who used that vessel would have lived and worked. Talk about history coming to life, my goodness. It's just wonderful, isn't it? So thanks to the wooden patched up wall and the removal of the well-trained soldier and their money, this part of the world was starting to feel decidedly not very Roman at all. And you have to wonder, as the people who lived through it, as they approached the year 400, would it have felt different? Would it have felt strange? Would it have felt like something was dying? Well, the answer is most probably not. They would have carried on regardless, and they would have been convinced that the Roman way of life would continue forever, most probably. Sadly, that was not to be the case. And as the year 408 turned and we started to edge towards 409 AD, the end of the Roman Empire was approaching fast. So we're circling back up to the wall through this really gorgeous little village. It's a pit village, actually. It's called Greenhead. The reason why it's called a pit village is around here in the 1800s there used to be lots of coal mines, and they were known locally as pits. The people who worked in the coal mines needed places to live, so pit villages sprang up. This one is particularly popular, especially with walkers, and there's a really gorgeous youth hostel just here, actually. There's also a gorgeous holiday let next door, which we stayed in a few years ago. I'll show you it now. It's perfect because just a short walk straight up here. In fact, we can go this way. We follow the river, and in just a moment, we'll be back up on the wall. So how did it end? How did Roman Britain cease to be? If you're expecting a bang, it's a bit of a whimper. Do you remember we spoke about those Pictish and well, it's the Picts and the Scotty tribes working together with barbarian hordes, they were called, from across Europe? Well, they started in about 360 AD, and they were coordinated attacks, which is really quite impressive, isn't it, when you consider there's no sort of global network of communications back then. And that started to bring the Roman Empire to its knees. Historians look at it as, they call it the barbarian conspiracy, because it really is, you know, quite sort of outstanding that suddenly everyone knew this is the moment. If we attack them now, we might bring the once mighty Roman Empire to its knees. The citizens of Britannia, hearing the news, they were absolutely terrified. The Visigoths, the terrifying Visigoths, are attacking Rome, and they're, in the view of Britannia, they're attacking anyone to do with Rome. And all the troops here, all the professional troops had been withdrawn. So the people of Britain, who were part of the Roman Empire, chose to ask to leave. They, in effect, kicked out the very few, as a train flies by, they kicked out the very few Roman bureaucrats who were left, and they decided to just go it alone. That's a revelation for me. I've always thought my whole life that, you know, the Romans withdrew. I mean, they sort of had done, because the soldiers had, you know, bit by bit been withdrawn, but, you know, Britannia was still part of the Roman Empire. So it was the people of Britain who chose to ask them to go. Now, they did ask to come back again. In 410, they asked Rome, they wrote to the emperor and said, can we come back? But unfortunately, by then, the Roman emperor was in no position to come and help, because that year in 410 AD, Rome itself was captured and, you know, attacked, it's called sacked, by the Visigoths. What happened to life in Britain? It's sort of difficult to tell, because this is a period of time in history known as the Dark Ages. But modern archaeological techniques are slowly but surely starting to shed light on this really interesting time period. And what it's told us is, and we've sort of discovered this a little bit through the series, haven't we? But life along the wall, it carried on. Now, the wall was no longer needed, because it was no longer the edge of the empire. But the forts remained, and the commanders of the forts, they didn't have anyone to answer to. So they became sort of leaders of local war bands. And slowly but surely, the wall itself, you know, started to be chipped away at, and other things were built with it. In the short term, it appears to be bridges and also early Christian churches, which were the beneficiary of so much Roman stone. But then, as the year 1066 dawned, a brand new invading empire arrived in Britain. They were called the Normans, and they brought with them their skills to build castles. And they built their castles out of stone. The name just becomes obvious when I tell you that when this castle was built, Hadrian's Wall drove straight past here, and there must already have been a little hole in the wall. That hole was about to get a whole lot bigger, because every piece of stone from this castle was built with Hadrian's Wall stone. The castle's actually built in an L shape, and I've got to say it's really not that impressive at all. When compared to other castles, it's really quite small, but it did have a very important visitor, a royal visitor, Edward I. who you may actually know, surprisingly, King Edward I, because that was the guy who fought against William Wallace. And if you've seen the film Braveheart, Edward I was played superbly by the actor Patrick McGoohan. Unfortunately, that was a battle which Sir Percival and also King Richard was going to lose. Now, the standard is very similar to the eagle that Romans used to carry at the front of their legions, the king's standard. If it fell in battle, that was it. The war was over, and so it was really important for the standard bearer to hold that standard high for as long as possible. And he did. Even when, Richard himself fell, Sir Percival still carried on holding that standard up. And the story goes that even when his legs were chopped away from under him, he still held up that standard until, of course, eventually it did fall. And when it fell, a whole new era in England began. That's the Tudor era, because it was Henry Tudor who took over. And of course, his son was King Henry VIII. But that's a whole other story. Would you believe we are walking parallel to where the wall once stood? There's the fighting ditch, and that farmer's wall there behind is on top of, well, it's not on top of, because the wall's gone. As we now know, the wall in so many sections of Hadrian's Wall has simply just been robbed away. We're actually coming up, just up here, we're going to walk past where once a turret would have stood, like the one we saw earlier on today's walk. I mean, thank goodness for John Clayton. Otherwise, who knows what we would have been able to see. Perhaps this series wouldn't have even been able to have been made. But once, right where this tree is, stood turret, I think it's number 46. You can only imagine now, can't you, at how amazing it must have looked in 122 AD when it had just been built. And this is the final climb of the series. My goodness, I mean, what an adventure it's been. Just wonderful. And I must just say, there's so many walks you could do here. And there's more wall, there is more wall as you head west. But there's just little bits and pieces, and in my opinion, none of it's as good as what we've seen in this series. And the reason why I picked this series is the landscape that we've walked through today just perfectly shows you the end of that story of the Roman era, the start of a whole new era. And really it leaves us right where the wall sits in our world today. And where exactly is it that Hadrian's Wall finds itself in the modern world today? Well, this place is captivating. The stories here are endless. I could make 3 series and still not have scratched the surface. The sights go on forever. It's no wonder that it's inspired endless Hollywood directors and authors. But it's actually Sir Walter Scott who summed up everything that I love about Hadrian's Wall in a poem that he wrote in 1797. This was long before the fascination with preserving this place actually came about. He was way ahead of his time, and I'll read it to you now. Take these flowers which purple waving on the ruined rampart grew, where the sons of freedom braving Rome's imperial standards flew. Warriors from the breach of danger pluck no longer laurels there. They but yield the passing stranger, wildflower wreaths the beauty's hair. Three years ago, we started planning 2 brand new series. We wanted to bring together everything we'd learnt about superb production, whilst focusing on a historical story that we were passionate about. Walking the Wall was the first of those 2 series, and I can't quite believe it's ending. As I think you may now realise, I adore the Romans. It's been my absolute pleasure to take you on this journey with me, and my goodness, I hope I've shown you some of the reasons why the Romans are so fascinating over the last 7 walks. They gave us concrete, they gave us the width of the modern railway, they gave us running water, they gave us central heating. I mean, I could make 10 series on the things which the Romans did, which are still with us today. And if you think about it, many modern democracies that the world is built on are based on principles that the Romans developed. But now it's time for this series to end. I can't quite believe it. Yes, it's time for us to leave Roman Britain and move on to a brand new adventure. But hold on a minute. I just said a moment ago that we started planning 2 brand new series. Yes, Walking the Wall was just the first. It was the mere appetizer to what's to come. So don't miss 2023 when we head to a brand new era in world history. And if you thought Walking the Wall was spectacular, wait until you see what we've got in store for you next year. For now though, thank you so much for joining me on this wonderful series. It's been my absolute privilege to take you with me. And I'll see you next year for something quite unforgettable.
What a walk! And what a series. Oh my goodness. It has been
Amazing.
It's
Amazing.
been such an absolute privilege for me to take all of you with me on such a personal journey. It really has.
You don't need to talk about it if it's just too much for you. Dan is a very emotional being.
Not always.
Not always, no, but you do.
Only
get
sometimes.
Yeah, you do.
I get emotional about the things that I care about.
Yeah.
And it's because it's a personal story, really. Because without that, I probably wouldn't have had a lifelong passion for history. And because that was the seed which became my love of history, I always have gravitated towards the Romans. But then, how epic to discover the actual end to the story, because honestly, until I researched this series, I always thought that the Romans withdrew. Now, granted, they sort of had, but they hadn't. Yes, they'd taken their troops away. They're really sort of professional, cool troops, and they'd left the dribs and drabs. But they were still saying that Britannia was still part of the empire and still wanting their taxes. And it was the population of Britannia that went, no, sorry, get out. Because if you're going to get attacked by the Visigoths, which they were, we don't want any part of it. So that also was just wonderful to discover new things. But then also to go and see that lovely castle, because I'd never gone up there.
Oh, right, okay. I went a couple of times, yeah.
To go up there and discover its story was just tremendous. And, it really sort of shows you, because that is what happened across the country. The stone from, all the towns, because Lincoln was a big Roman town, so was Chester, and York was, and the stone was taken, and it was used for other things. So just wonderful. But the huge but is, the reason why I don't feel completely sad is because of what I know what's coming next year.
So do I.
And if you want to know what's coming next year, you need to tune in to our pop show, our Patron Only show, which we will be broadcasting on Sunday. It's this Sunday at 2 p.m. British summertime. So you can watch live from 2 p.m, but then you can watch any time you like, because granted, for some people that's the middle of the night or the very early morning.
We do get a lot of people who've got up early and they're sat in their pyjamas having coffee, which is lovely.
You can watch that show from 3:20 BST. After that time, you can watch it any time you like. So tune in to me, and you want to tune in, because we will be talking a little bit about what my new show is next year, and we'll also be talking about what Kay's new shows next year, and they're both just
they're very exciting. But not only that, I'm going to be showing everybody my new blanket design.
Oh wow.
As well,
this is quite huge.
You will all of our patrons that watch it will get to see it a week before it's released.
Yes.
So a week before anyone else.
Look, we've already sort of snuck into the Endy Bits a little bit. So look, whilst Walking the Wall is now finished, My Favourite Colourways is back for one more episode next time.
Yes.
So that's going to be superb. Going to really round out our year shows.
Yes.
Clear it all up, ready for, yes, you guessed it, it's the holiday programming. The holiday programming is on the horizon.
Yes.
It's very exciting.
Christmas is coming, everybody.
The goose is getting fat.
Yes.
Please put a penny in the old man's hat.
I don't know that one. I don't know that saying. I don't like goose very much. It's sort of like beef, isn't it?
It's very beefy.
Yeah.
Look, it's time for the Endy Bits.
Yes, Endy Bits!
Woohoo, she remembered. Now look, we've already mentioned the Patron Only show, which is on Sunday, and in that show, we will be awarding 2 prizes.
Yes.
One huge grand prize and one runner-up prize for this year's Great British Coastal Challenge. And we wanted to show you the grand prize.
Yes.
Because the grand prize is grand.
So I've been,
We have been running for years, year-long activities.
Yeah.
And this is a really important one, this year's year-long activity, and we'll tell you why in the pop show on Sunday.
Yeah.
But we wanted to show you the prize to get you very excited.
Yeah, now I did mention what this prize was going to be. I've mentioned it a few times within this year.
You see, it's fine saying the words.
Yeah,
it's
and
only when you see it.
People might have forgotten what I said, and they might have thought, "Oh, she won't do that. She won't do that."
Even if they remember.
What I said the grand prize would be is an advent calendar of yarns, and all of the yarns are hand dyed by me.
Oh my goodness.
So what I've done is I have hand wound 24 little balls that are all 20 grams each. I've made sure that actually they're more like 21, 22 grams each. And they're all yarns that I've dyed. Some of them might be familiar to the person who wins. Some of them will not be, because some of them are one of a kind and nobody ever saw. Some of them you did see. But what I've done is...
Shall I hold it for you?
I've put it into this lovely box. I found a box. I wanted something that didn't look overly festive.
When can you open it?
I'll open a sec. I wanted a box that didn't look overly festive so that you could reuse it and, for whatever you want. So I got this one with this lovely gold design on. And it's like one of these ones that have a magnet. So inside here... Oh, Dan's disappeared. Inside here are 24 little parcels, all in these lovely little paper bags with gnomes on. And they're all numbered. And each one of those has got a 20 gram hand wound little ball in there. So it's ready to go. You don't need to wind it. You can just pick it up and start knitting. So that's the prize. So we will...
Oh my goodness.
I know. It's taken me a little bit of time, I've got to say. And I researched, I wanted really pretty paper bags and I wanted the right stickers, and it's taken some time. But yeah, there it is. So what I'm going to do, that will be drawn random number from everyone that's entered up until, I'm going to draw it on like the Friday before Pop on Sunday. So everyone that's entered anything in our year-long knit-along will have a chance. I didn't want to limit it to just the last quarter because everybody deserves a chance to win that.
Yeah.
So I can't remember how many entries there are. Loads, 1,500 or something. So I'm going to random number and we will announce the winner of that prize on the pop on Sunday.
So do not miss that pop. It's going to be
miss it.
huge because big prize draw, telling you about our new shows for next year.
Yeah.
Also huge announcements about our year in general next year, about our Patron exclusive events.
Yeah.
Because there's some seriously exciting things on the way.
Yeah.
Plus Kay will be showing her new blanket
New
design.
blanket coming out.
And tons of other stuff as well.
So it's a big, exciting show on Sunday.
So not only has today been huge and exciting,
I know.
it's going to be live
I need
and
a
huge
cup
and
of tea.
exciting.
Oh, I do
on
need a
Sunday.
cup of tea.
So look, on that note then, I think we should draw things to a close. What a show. Thank you all so much. If I
Thank
didn't
you,
say so
everybody.
before, I just want to say again while I've got the opportunity, thank you all so much for your messages all this year about Walking the Wall.
Yes.
It's the same about Case Goes Kitchen. We had someone send us a message just the other day saying,
did,
why does
you
Case Goes
did.
Kitchen have to end? I
Yeah,
love it.
yeah.
And our reply is the same with everything. Our job is to entertain you guys, and if we ran the same things constantly, they would very quickly become boring.
We love coming up with new ideas and new exciting things, and that's
we listen to
really-
what you love, and we
yeah.
try and create things around that.
Yeah,
So don't be
absolutely.
sad that Kay's Cozy Kitchen is
No.
finished, because in the short term, Kay's Handmade Christmas is just around the corner.
It is.
So don't worry about
Yes.
seeing lots of lovely cooking things. Look, but Walking the Wall, thank you so much for your lovely letters.
Yeah.
And don't panic about next year. Trust me, you're going to love it.
You are.
And on that note, we will say cheerio. So thank you so much for watching.
Thank you, everybody.
And we'll see you in 2 weeks.
Have a good
for
2
more.
weeks.
Bye.
Bye.
Sitting and knitting, it's Dan and Kay, the bakery bears. Enthusiasm's not quitting for Dan and Kay, the bakery bears. They'll take you to fabulous places of which they're favorites they'll share. You better buy a pattern and get yourself a bakery bear. You'll find yourself in a castle while watching the bakery bears. It never feels like a hassle to sit and watch the bakery bears. What's on your shelf or what's in